Hi my people, it's Great here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how I try to replicate Marc Brunet's shading and rendering style on my character right here. So if you're out there and you're wondering, can a beginner actually use his rendering style? Can a beginner use the tutorials that he put out there? Well, so I'm going to be covering everything in this video, so stick to the end so you can get every single detail from this one. So without wasting much of your time, let's go.
So there are 4 steps that we're going to talk about here, and these are the most important parts of the whole illustration. And the very first is the Lineart Step, and after which we're going to talk about the values and shading, and then we're going to move forward to flat colors, and then we're going to finally talk about the gradient maps and touch-ups. Before we move forward, I've got a free Lineart PNG that I have done. Basically what we're using for this video here, you can download it now in the link that's in the description, and please tag me on Instagram and Twitter if you get to use this Linearts to create any nice work. Now for the line art, I'm not going to go into details because you probably already have the line art that I'm using here. But if you are going to create yours and you want to use this brush, click the link there and it will take you to his website where you can download the brush set. Tip number 1, don't paint all your shading and highlights and everything on one layer. This is how Marc paints in the video. I know you've seen the video. If you haven't, it's a really nice video, but it's a very advanced way of painting where you have to tackle all your shadows, ambient occlusion, the main shadow, cast and bounce light and highlights and all of that. You have to tackle everything at once. He said in the video that it's challenging and then it's fun for him, but that's the mark of a pro, so you don't want to try to do that. At least for me, that was the mistake I made. But I was trying to copy his style as much or as closely as possible, or try to learn something while trying to copy his style. So I had to follow that that way, and I'm not used to painting this way, so I ended up spending 18 plus hours trying to illustrate this character, and it doesn't even show. My god, trust me, if you're not there yet, you're going to suffer. You're going to get really frustrated and dump everything. So that's my number 1 tip. The number 2 tip that I want to tell you now, shading this way, the biggest thing that you should pay attention to when shading this way is forms. This will blow your mind. Stop worrying about, oh, what is happening, what's happening. Think about the form of the shape you're shading, and then when it's just like painting a cube or a sphere or something like that. You shade in the form that the object takes, right? So if it's a sphere, you gotta shade it in that circular motion. You have to like shade in that circular motion. I know you get the jerk, you get what I'm saying. So the same way, if you're painting maybe the fingers or the arms, you have to be thinking how the forms are wrapping. And this is what brings me to the first point, that if you're a beginner, you haven't really built a strong foundation in forms, you probably have a lot of difficulty because you don't understand how to direct your shading, because you don't understand forms. So this is where you have to pay attention to. In this one, if you've learned a little bit about form, you should be able to think of how your characters are wrapping. So you gotta like think about it like it's a 3D shape or something, right? So that's how you're going to make progress. The next tip I want to give you for shading is, don't be worried about small details. Small details come last. How you get started is paint the big shapes first, and then you can always overlap. That is when you're painting, you can ignore some small things and then paint the bigger picture, and then later on use a clipping mask or the lasso tool to select that part out and then paint that part. But if you are thinking about the small details and then those small things, it will hinder you from seeing the big picture and being able to create that holistic 3D piece. That's 3D look basically that we want to have here. So big pictures first, small details later. Your lasso tool, your airbrush or the brush you're using to shade, and your blend brush. These three things are very important. You're not even going to be erasing, trust me. You're just going to be picking. If you need to erase or you need to change something, you're going to pick a lighter color and then go over it. So your lasso tool, paintbrush or airbrush, I use the airbrush mostly for what I did, and then for place where I need to create some kind of like hard look, I use some of the brushes that it's in that brush pack. You can check it out right here. So those are the three things that you're going to need. Your range of value is very important, and you need to be looking at this while you are doing this illustration, because if your work with the wrong range of value, you could be leaning towards too dark or you could be leaning towards too bright. So you want to have that perfect blend of dark and light. So a perfect video that explains this in detail is this video by Mel Milton here. You can check it out probably after this video, or if you want to. I particularly watched it. I stumbled upon the video while I was preparing to make this video, and I stumbled upon this one by Mel Milton, and I checked it out, and it was pretty helpful because it helped me think. But then trust me, you're not going to hit it out the first time, but yeah, it's good to always have that have that in the arsenal. For the flat colors right here, what I'm doing is just selecting this individual part, that's the trouser, the hat, the jacket, and just filling it with different colors. Don't worry, I'm not really thinking so much about what colors to use, because this is something that can always be changed. It can always be manipulated later on. So I was just going with whatever color I felt, my gut feeling, that feeling of, oh, I think this color will be good, and then I can probably change it later on. So I didn't go into details as to what I'm doing with the layers and all that. I think Mark already made a very nice video that goes into details as to how to follow through. And so if you need something specific, you need to just go back, you need to go and watch that video that he made. It on his channel, and I think I've linked it in the description, so you can check it from there. So here are some tips that you need to pay attention to if you're doing your gradient map. So you have to use at least 4 to 5 colors in your gradient map if you don't want your work or your illustrations to look flat. The second thing is, if you don't like the outcome, the problem is most likely from your values, because the colors in your gradient map are simply assigned to the values or shading of the character. The third thing is, just feel free to experiment with it, because your goal right now should not be to try and create a final finished piece that is a masterpiece, but your goal should be to learn something practical from this first trial, and then the second trial should look a lot better. After the gradient maps, I simply do color adjustments and corrections on a merged layer, and add small details like face blush, lip color, and any other small detail I think of. Just do this in Photoshop. So I save the file and move to Photoshop to do this, and then I add a background and set it to and blur it, and then do a little bit of gradient maps and all that stuff to make sure that the character is sitting on a background that complements her or him or whatever the character is. So that's all I did for this piece, and this is the final outcome.